Good morning. I wanted to take a moment as there's more and more conversation about moving to the blockchain. There's so many opportunities that we have, but we still have to understand the fundamentals. Now, for years, decades, we've been tricked into believing that you can't do this yourself for whatever reason, but mostly it's greed, right? If you give over your control, your understanding to somebody else, then in fact, they control your money, your wealth. Now, I've often stated over and over again that the largest multi-level marketing scam in the United States is actually the 401k. Now, somebody will say, well, hey, that's the way I save for my retirement. Is it really? If you put in $100 out of your paycheck, it's not even trackable. Your paycheck was direct deposited. There's no serial or code number associated with that. So where did that money go? If we go back to the conversation, you have a $100 bill and a serial number on it, and you walk it into a bank. When you want your $100 bill back, do you get that same $100 bill with that serial number? No, you don't. Well, let's fast forward. How long do you leave your money in a 401k? 10, 20, 30, even 40 years, 50 years? You're actually penalized if you go to remove the funds. Does that even sound justifiable? There should be a lot of red flags there. So what I want to do before we move on to conversations around the blockchain and what that means to you for investing, I'd like you to take a moment to go back to the basics, understand the market direction. When you're investing in a stock, you can of course earn funds, whether it's up or down. But you got to understand the direction and how to place what I still call a bet as the markets are manipulated. But going back into the basics is something that we can all start with. So in this case, I've pulled up Bloomberg's economic calendar. And when you do that, there's a page that comes up that lists a whole bunch of different countries. Now, this can be overwhelming, and there's a lot of check marks that are standardly put in there you don't need to worry about. But how do you know which ones you need to follow and which ones you don't? Well, you have to click a little bit deeper. Now, let's say Bloomberg isn't your favorite, or you want multiples to compare. You would just type in economic calendar, and then multiple financial platforms will come up with their version. You can compare the data and see what you're most comfortable with. But what we want to do is figure out which of these stocks we're going to look at. So when you originally get to the site, it looks like this, and it's got the charts and the list. So if we look at the first one is the time it was posted, a currency, how relevant it is, 1, 2, or 3, what the post or announcement was. In this case, it was Chinese financials, correct? So Chinese industrial profit year to date, and it's actually negative 7.8. Huge red flag. The previous before that was negative 9. If we're looking at Biden economics, then we're going to say that this is great because a negative 7.8 is better than a loss of a negative 9. Well, let's look a little further. On Monday, the GPB, so Great Britain, posted the CBI distributive trade survey. The actual was negative 11, forecast is negative 30, and previous was negative 36. So it outperformed what it expected because negative 11 is less than negative 30, but it previous to that was negative 36. So are we seeing that the worst of the financial downfall is behind us? Well, there's a lot of different markers you can look at as well. Sentiment, company layoffs, right sizing, inflation, and interest rates. But overall, you can look at building permits, job seekers, new home sale starts. How do you sort through this to your auction notes? You would click on the filter right here. And this comes back to the chart that I opened the conversation with. These are all the different countries that you would pull up main markers for. Now, it's very important that when you're working in the global market, that you're actually looking at global markets, not just the country that you're in. And especially if you're not in one of the top financial markets, you want to have a broader basis for your interpretation. So how do you understand which companies that you need to be tracking? Well, here we've got, I just put in a search for the economic calendar by country, I think is the search key that I came up with. And I just pulled up this one randomly. I don't have an attachment to this one. You'll find your own. But this for 2023, it was actually the beginning of the year. This was a distribution of the countries with the largest stock markets worldwide by share of total world equity as market value. So this tells you where's the money flowing. You don't have large amount of money flowing and you don't have volatility, then you're not having money movement. So this is going to tell you which countries you want to filter on the other economic calendar list. Here we've got the United States at 58.4%. Definitely want to track that no matter where you are in the world. You've got Japanese at 6.3, UK at 4.1, China at 3.7. And then you have some a little bit sub 3 that you can kind of pick and choose in that market. Really, you want to track 6 to 8. So if you cut off, you go to US, Japan, UK, and China, you've got your solid 4 there. And then you might want to include France and Canada. And I also often like to stick Switzerland and sometimes Australia in there as well to round it out. If we go down even further, you can see other countries listed. You can see South Korea, Taiwan, India as well, sub 2%. But they're all rising as market players, correct? What I didn't see here is the EU. And that's a market player in Saudi Arabia specifically, you really want to keep your eyes on as we're moving forward, as they're demanding and commanding a major market share for the financial markets of the future. So if we go to this list here, this is the overlay of how you would check the various countries that you want to track. And then we can scroll down a bit and you've got the various categories that you want to look at as well. Before I step on this, I want to move forward because we're not going to come back to this, but importance. So again, this is what I've said, you've got level importance 1, 2, or 3. So if you don't feel they're important, you don't have to check them. You can kind of get some of the other riffraff out and focus on 3. Since we're only looking at about 6 countries, I'd like to have the broader perspective, but you can choose what is important in your assessment. But I do want to go back to these categories. Now, I like to check all of them. But there's a big assumption here as to what is being covered under this categories and how it might be helpful. Let's see if the other market will go on here. No, it looks like it's still not on the screen. So what are these? We can make an assumption, but why make an assumption when we've got a detailed explanation? So right now I'm on investing.com and I just searched economic calendar category explanations and this came right up. It's actually a very comprehensive list here, how to read an economic calendar, using economic calendars for successful investing. What is an economic calendar? So you see the spreadsheet that we just pulled up there. And then this is the categories for the calendar that I wanted to just take a moment to go over. Economic calendars provide the schedules and details of various influential events and announcements. Some of the major data categories can be found here. So we've got economic indicators. And as I went over a few of the charts, it's going to list critical reports such as GDP, unemployment, inflation, consumer spending, manufacturing activity, and of course, housing. So this is a broad economic indicator of what was expected, what the actual was, and what the future is indicating. The next step here is central bank policy decisions as they affect the entire world. Speeches by central bankers. Here's where we get Fed chair reports, treasury reports. So what are they thinking? What are they telling you? And whether or not they're following what's being said. They're going to tell you whether or not the interest rates are expected to continue to rise or to fall. They're going to give you a political sentiment. The next item here is geopolitical events. That would be something like elections, global summits, regulatory changes. As we have learned, people are the policies. And the political instability or stability that may or may not impact investors. Then we have confidence indexes. How confident are they? Now, again, propaganda plays into this, but you'll get an understanding from the investor platform what the confidence surveys are showing. which will help guide your decision on whether or not the market is clear, right? Navigating the economic calendar goes into explanation here. It's broken down into time, currency, importance, event, the actual year, forecast year, previous year, and then how to use it. Again, going back into that filter and checking. And then the summary of this report allows you to build your own platform out and to monitor the key indicators that your trader might use. The individual that you've turned your money over to years or for years has been at, since Yahoo Finance came out. Now there's been others, but Yahoo Finance made it as easy as possible for the layman like you and I to understand the indicators and start investing and controlling our own finances. So again, I'm going to put this link at the bottom because it does have a great summary of everything that we've gone through. And then of course you can select your own economic calendar. I put up Bloomberg as an example, but this is a first step to understanding the direction of the market, the sentiment, the key indicators, and core markets that are affecting whether we want to or not a global economic environment. Okay, this has been a brief update, really hammering down the idea of FinTech before we get into the notion of blockchain. Have a great afternoon.